All right, well, welcome to the Malkatu Makai. We have a special guest for us today, sharing about how we can envision stormwater on Oahu. Um, we have with us today Julie Beth Hines, AICP. She is the founding principal of Birchline Planning LLC. She supports public and private sector clients with expertise in land use planning, water resources, program development, financial management, and public communications. Her experience includes over a decade serving as a municipal planning and stormwater services director. In addition to working on the stormwater utility for Oahu, Julie Beth's work on the audit of Maui County's zoning regulations and the ongoing update of Hawaii County's general plan. She is a past chair of the Water Environment Federation Stormwater Research Symposium and a lecturer and research associate in the Department of Urban Planning and Urban Studies and Planning at UC San Diego. She and her husband are the proud parents of 4 grown children, and 2 goofball dogs who regularly appear in remote meetings. And one already made an appearance here this morning, so we might see him again.
Yep.
Julie.
Mr. Ahi, he's got to be in the calls. Thank you so much, Tanya. So our quick talk today is about what's the vision for Oahu's water environment, and particularly for managing the stormwater that can be a real problem in many ways around the island, but also is a really important resource for us. And Oahu has basically 3 different water systems, developed water systems that provide us with our drinking water, our sanitation, and also that manage the rainwater that falls really from Malkatu Makai. The stormwater system includes the catch basins and drains that you see in the street, but it also includes upland Mauka areas and streams and swales and beach mouths and any of those systems through which water is flowing ultimately to the ocean. Drinking water systems are in a separate system, and that's managed by the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. Sanitary sewage is separate from what happens when it rains. Sanitary sewage is the network of pipes that conveys what happens from when we flush and that drains from most houses and businesses around Oahu to wastewater treatment plants, which treat that water to a high level before it's discharged to the ocean. But our stormwater, our rainwater, flows largely untreated into those storm drains and mountain streams that come down through our cities, picking up a lot of pollution on the way, and most of that is not treated right now before it gets into the ocean. Managing that big system, that Maukana Makai system, is the responsibility of not only citizens and landowners, but of 11 different departments within the city and county of Honolulu. The main department, Tanya's department, is the Department of Facility Maintenance, which is the lead permittee and the main manager for federal requirements, for meeting federal requirements under the Clean Water Act for that stormwater system. But it touches on the operations and actions of 11 different departments. And it's interesting when we talk about what's the citizens' role in clean water and in our stormwater system in particular. It's interesting how we don't often really think about the impact and the function of our stormwater systems. It's sort of something we take for granted. Of course, we all want to think about Hawaii having beautiful, clean water that we use as our beaches and our natural areas and our history. But in addition to that, we have this stormwater system that has a lot of problems, and we don't necessarily associate these with stormwater runoff all the time. It's not something that is necessarily thought of when we're walking around our environment and looking at things like storm drains. The stormwater system throughout the island has enormous impacts on overall water quality, and it also has impacts on our neighborhoods and our quality of life. Things like trash, beach mouths that get congested at the outlet. This one in the bottom center is in Waianae. Ditches and streams that aren't able to be maintained regularly. Things like dumping, and that's your typical shopping cart in the Alawai. All of these are impacts on the stormwater system that come from human activity and from some from natural processes, but these are all part of the total stormwater system for the island. And most of that impact, some of that impact is from things like trash and dumping, but a lot of that impact that you see is from runoff from what we call impervious surfaces. So your rooftops, roads, driveways, and parking lots primarily all around the island. And when rain hits those, it runs off into our gutters, our streams, our storm drains, generally without being treated. And that stormwater runoff will carry pollutants like oil and grease and sediment into our waters and lead to some of these problems that we see around Oahu today in our water environment. We have a lot of documentation, both scientific studies and increasingly a lot of really detailed looks at water chemistry that tell us that stormwater in particular, more than treated sanitary wastewater and more than other sources, is having very significant and measurable impacts on Oahu's nearshore environment in particular. Group like the Center for Ecosystem Health has identified that it's nutrients that are unique to stormwater runoff. So things like picking up pet waste or picking up lawn fertilizer are the main reason there's a lot of non-native limu growth off Eva Beach. There are metals in stormwater runoff that you can directly trace to parking lots and tires and roadways that are being found in the fine sediment in a lot of the reef flats. And the University of Hawaii in particular has really been able to document from this work that the main impact on recreational water quality, which is so important to Oahu's water environment, is really from stormwater runoff off those impervious surfaces and not from treated sanitary wastewater from that separate system. Fortunately, there are a lot of different ways that stormwater runoff impacts can be reduced. And what we're going to be doing in the next couple of months, led by the Department of Facility Maintenance, is to speak with groups of Oahu citizens about what's the vision for you individually for getting your neighborhood to be part of the clean water solution, for maybe going in and fixing some driveways or adverse runoff areas or reducing sediment that's getting into a stream or a beach that's near you. And what are the actions and investments that you'd like the city and county to take, maybe in partnership with your local group or schools, to begin to really improve our water environment? There are a lot of things that citizens can do that are relatively low cost, that are within everyone's ability, depending on where you live and what you do. You might choose different ones, but everyone has the ability to be part of cleanups. Everyone who owns a home or is in a community, perhaps you're part of a community organization that has a building, all of those have opportunities to do things like put in a rain garden so that runoff water is captured on your site and is used to support plant growth rather than ending up being a problem when it runs off those impervious surfaces, gets into our storm drains, and then gets into our ocean. So there's a lot that can happen at the individual scale of either your home or your faith community's building, or that you can take out when you're walking around or part of a group to do stream cleanup. In addition to that, there are a lot of techniques that we generally call green infrastructure that the city and county may have the ability to support financially around the island. What we're coming to the community to ask is what would work and be beneficial in your neighborhood, at the parks where you go, at your local library, again, perhaps in your neighborhood if you've got common open land or you live in an association. Green infrastructure can be used even in places that are already built through things like the green roof at the bottom center, that those can be put onto buildings. Hawaii is actually a great environment for green roof systems, unlike a lot of other parts of the country. We can also go back into our parking lots and do things like changing out the parking lot landscaping to allow that water, like you see at top right, to flow into a constructed rain garden in a way that reduces the amount of sediment and other pollution that ultimately gets into our waters. We have the opportunity, especially when things like parking lots or sidewalks are redone, to put in permeable concrete and pavement, which you see at the left. Oahu, again, is a good environment for those. They tend to hold up really quite well relative to other places. So where are there places where we get local ponding or we see excessive runoff or heat from our pavements, that those might be good techniques. And these are the kinds of strategies we want you to be aware of, and we want to hear more about where in your community could these be part of a vision for a healthier water environment. There are also some bigger picture investments that the city and county will make where we would really like to have your input on your vision for making some of our bigger spaces better, better for water, better for people. These include things like Milwaukee's program for green schoolyard transformations. That photo at left is part of a systematic project in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to go into old schoolyards where there's lots of impervious surface leading to lots of runoff and flooding, but also heat, and reimagine those as spaces that can really absorb rainwater, keep pollution out of, in that case, Lake Michigan, and create a better space for children and for the community. So green schoolyard transformations could be an investment that's part of Oahu's future. Green streets in the middle refers to using different kinds of planted bioswales, which is the bottom center photo, or again, those permeable pavements like you see in the parking lane in the center at the top, to deal with localized flooding, to make streets look better, and also to absorb that rainwater to prevent flooding, prevent pollution. They can also reduce heat if you've got a road where it gets particularly hot during summers or during heat waves. That's another one where we really want to hear from the community. What would be your vision for getting green streets into certain places around the island? Also, on the right, there can be a lot more use of rainwater harvesting. The city and county and the state of Hawaii are really working towards making rainwater harvesting a regular part of new buildings. San Francisco has done the same. Where do you see opportunities in your community, perhaps again with community buildings, to catch that rainwater and make it a resource instead of something that runs off and becomes part of our pollution problems? So those are some ideas, and we really will want to hear from you in our visioning process about where and which ones you feel could be the most beneficial. So the meetings are going to be coming up. There's also plenty of opportunities to provide your input online. I'd like everybody to take note of the website at the top where you can sign up for announcements and then sign up to join a meeting. We're going to be having meetings that are roughly focused on different areas of the island, though everyone's invited to any meeting. They're going to be virtual still, so please feel free to participate whenever you can, or if you've got a particular focus for your community, take a look at our regions and our available dates below. And we're going to be asking about how can we improve our stormwater services across all of those 11 departments, listening to you about the main concerns in your community. And I would say that's both on stormwater and water pollution and flooding, but also what are the community spaces that you think could be improved? And then to think more about how we can take stormwater from being a nuisance and a pollution problem and something that's an unpleasant factor in some of our communities and turn it into a resource that supports that beautiful ocean environment and water environment for the island. So that's the steps we can take on visioning. I want to make sure everyone also knows about the signups for our stormwater utility study, which is ongoing. That's at stormwaterutilityoahu.org. Tanya and her team also have an excellent guide to what you can do on your own home with green infrastructure to capture water. Anything you do now could save you money in the future if the city council decides to switch to using stormwater fees. That's all described on the website, but that green infrastructure guide is a great resource. There are also 4 ways you're encouraged to use to report stormwater issues in your neighborhood. Stormwater issues can be reported on the 311 app, through the email you see below to complaints@honolulu.gov, the environmental concerns line, and the clean stream and storm drain hotline for specific issues about those streams and storm drains. We've got lots and lots of resources on those websites, and we really encourage everyone to be part of talking about that vision. Where would you want to see investments and change in how stormwater gets managed throughout the island of Oahu? So Tanya, that's my little spiel for today.
Great, thank you, JV. We do have a question from Melanie from Hawaii Sea Grant. She's asking, could you please expand on the 11 stormwater specific responsibilities of the county agencies?
Sure. So if we look at, let's see if we can go back to that slide. So the departments in the city and county have very different responsibilities for different aspects of complying not only with the Federal Clean Water Act, but also with some Hawaii regulations that include responsibility for repairing eroding areas, especially Mauka areas. The Department of Facility Maintenance is in charge fundamentally. It's DFM's responsibility to ensure that all those departments are taking their own actions for the city's total compliance with things like making sure storm drains and storm drain and catch basins are inspected and cleaned on a regular basis. It's actually specified in the permit. The Department of Design and Construction has responsibility for designing stormwater treatment systems to begin to start to manage runoff from areas that are already built. So things like creating catch basins or bioswales from some of our roadways. Design and Construction and DFM cooperated, for example, on the redesign of the parking lot at the Alawai Golf Course, which uses green infrastructure and permeable pavement to capture runoff from a pretty large parking lot and building. Department of Parks and Rec does a lot of maintenance around the island that has a big impact on stormwater runoff and stormwater management. And fire and police, it's like, what do they have to do with runoff? They're responsible for making sure that their own facilities have proper stormwater management and control. We also have issues related to encampments of people who are homeless, and there's a cooperative effort to work together on making sure that where we do have those encampments, that we don't have adverse water quality impacts. And that's a cooperative, that's a collaborative effort between public safety and DFM. So there are lots of different roles, though. Fundamentally, Department of Facility Maintenance and the Stormwater Quality Branch have that primary responsibility for making sure that actions and investments that happen keep the city and county in compliance with those federal permits.
All right, we got a big mahalo. Thank you for that clarification, JB. There's any other questions? I put all the links into the chat so you can get to them easily. And I thank you again, JB, for sharing with us about Oahu stormwater and how we all can get involved to help shape our future for stormwater management.
Great. Delighted to do it. Always fun.
Okay. Aloha.
All right. Aloha.